Hello everyone, it's Mark Avenue, I'm Eric. Now that I've visited and ranked every Cedar Fair park, let's go one step further and rank every Cedar Fair roller coaster. There are 104 I've been on that I'll be ranking, so this is going to be pretty fun. Before we jump in, first off, there are a few rides I have not been on, or were not open when I went, so let's go over what I will not be ranking. Yukon Striker, Wild Mouse at Cedar Point, Wild Mouse at Dorney Park, Grizzly at King's Dominion, pre or post retrack, Snoopy's Racing Railway, Timberwolf, Zack Zoomer, Top Thrill 2, Iron Menace, Snoopy Soapbox Racers, those 2024 rides because they're not out yet, and a bunch of kiddie coasters. I've been on a few of the kiddie coasters, but definitely not all. And the one other very important note, as always, this is subjective. It's based on my opinions, experiences, preferences, and all that. So don't get too upset over why is this one higher than this one. Some of these are kind of close, and this list could change on any given day. There's some fluctuation in the middle especially. But if you're going to comment about what you think about the list, I encourage comments that provide different perspectives. Those are fun to read. But also, to a lesser extent, I encourage comments that call me high or drunk because they're pretty funny. But also, those are a bit mean sometimes, and there's really no need for them. So let's jump into the list. Number 104 is Flight Deck at Canada's Wonderland. This one is my least favorite roller coaster besides one other I might talk about in a future video. This Vekoma SLC is terrible. I'd rather ride any mild roller coaster or pretty much any other less painful ride. This one just has terrible headbanging, and the unique layout is very hard to enjoy as a result. Number 103 is Time Warp at Canada's Wonderland. A step up, this Zamperla Velar has a nice entrance sign. That's about it for merit. I'm not a big fan of this model at all. Few are though. Number 102 is Thunderhawk at Michigan's Adventure. This SLC is a decent step up from Flight Deck, but that's not saying a ton. There are much better SLCs out there. This one is a pretty bad ride. I've heard some defend it, I will not. Number 101 is Taxi Jam at Canada's Wonderland. A nice little kiddie coaster, that's it. Number 100, Wilderness Run at Cedar Point. Cracking the top 100 is this classic kiddie coaster with a very nice setting, even if it is mild compared to the big thrills that are obviously going to rank much higher. Number 99 is Woodstock Express at Kings Island. This wooden coaster, not really my thing. I'm not huge on these honestly. They're obviously meant for smaller guests, that's part of it, but they're a bit janky, so I don't love these, and really only recommend them if you are absolutely going for the credit, or it's just a short line and you have time. Number 98 is Woodstock Express at Carowinds. Same reason, same ride, all that. And number 97 is Woodstock Express at King's Dominion. Same reasons and all. I will be including all the clones that I've been on here, so buckle up for that. Number 96 is Dragonfire at Canada's Wonderland. Another dud in the Canada lineup. This one is not the worst arrow out there necessarily, but it's pretty close. It just might be, in fact. The layout is unspectacular, and it is a much more painful one than quite a few others. Number 95 is Woodstock Express at California's Great America. This is not the same wooden coaster as the others I mentioned so far. This Woodstock ride is a fun steel coaster, with a solid first drop for a family-based coaster, and I enjoyed this one a decent bit. Number 94 is Woodstock Express at Cedar Point. I believe this is the last of the Woodstock Express rides, and it's the best one. A fun Vekoma Junior coaster. It's decently thrilling for the family audience. There's a bell on the front that fits with that train theme, a nice setting, great job. Number 93, Corkscrew at Cedar Point. The weakest of Cedar Point's major thrilling rides, this one has grown on me a bit. The airtime hill is decent, the vertical loop is not bad, but the titular corkscrews are unfortunately poor. That is the worst thing about it, so the ride is overall still bad. Number 92 is Flying Ace Aerial Chase at Kings Island. This is a fun one. It is far from the worst and is one of the better, honestly, Vekoma family suspended coasters. I enjoyed it a decent bit. Not much else to say. Number 91 is Kitty Hawk at Carowinds. This frankly gets the edge just for a great name and a nice little bit of theming. Number 90 is Carolina Gold Rusher at Carowinds. This is one of my least favorite mine train coasters. I like that it crosses the state line, but it's not the best in any other regard, and it's much rougher than most of the others. Number 89 is Silver Streak at Canada's Wonderland. Silver Streak is a stronger suspended family coaster, so it gets a little bit higher. Number 88 is Thunder Run at Canada's Wonderland. This is a powered coaster. Some may not count it as a roller coaster, but I like how it goes around the mountain, and I found it was quite enjoyable, even if pretty mild. Number 87 is Ricochet at Carowinds. This wild mouse is very average, but it's not bad by any means, so it is a little higher than some of the other, slightly lesser family coasters. Number 86 is Wild Beast at Canada's Wonderland. Not as horrible of a wooden coaster as some say, but it's still pretty bad. And of course, people who say RMC Wild Beast, they have plenty of reason to want that. Number 85 is Ghoster Coaster at Canada's Wonderland. Ghoster Coaster is the same as Woodstock Express apparently, but a great theme and a far superior ride experience helps it rank quite a few spots above those. Number 84 is Cedar Creek Mine Ride. This is a great mine train coaster. It just ranks low because there's a lot of good rides in the chain. I think this setting is fantastic, plenty of parts are fun, and even if it's not the best of the mine trains, it's an enjoyable ride. Number 83 is Toombili. This is much lower than I imagine many would put it, but I think Toombili is among the most underwhelming coasters I've been on. Now, for context, I love 4D free spins. I find every single Six Flags one is pretty great, and Dragon Slayer at Adventureland, fantastic. This one is very mild. I do think the operations play a role in me not liking it so much, but the ride feels incredibly short, where the others I feel fulfilled by the end. I don't think I got a single flip on either side when I rode this, and honestly, it is only worth it if there is no wait for me. It is just not a very enjoyable experience, theming does not carry it very much, and it's just kind of eh. Number 82 is Jaguar at Knott's Berry Farm. This one is interesting. It's sort of a scenic tour of the Fiesta Village area of the park, and you go through the loop of Montezuma's Revenge. That's awesome. So even though it's very mild, it is much more fun than a few of the thrilling rides. Number 81 is Corkscrew at Michigan's Adventure. This corkscrew is not the best, but not the worst, so it ranks comfortably between the Cedar Point one and another I'll get to fairly soon. Number 80 is Iron Dragon at Cedar Point. This aero suspended coaster is not the most thrilling, but you still have those fun suspended swinging cars and a fantastic setting over water and good terrain. Excellent ride for what it is, even though it's just kind of eh compared to most of the bigger, even at some of the family coasters. Number 79 is Adventure Express. The new theming is awesome, and even before that, this was a great mine train. Setting is awesome, length is great, night ride is pretty unbeatable, forces are great, it's not that janky. I highly recommend getting on this one, honestly. Even though it is sort of just that family coaster type thing, it's very much worth getting on. Number 78 is Carolina Cyclone. The most baffling aero coaster, I think, because while most of them have a great vertical loop and painful corkscrews, this one had a pretty painful vertical loop and great corkscrews. This is unusual, but it works, and it's a great ride overall, one of the better aero loopers I would say. Number 77 is Apple Zapple at King's Dominion. Besides having a great name, this wild mouse gets points for a fun first drop, and overall just being a fun one. Most wild mouse coasters are at least alright, and this one is above average. Number 76 is Psycho Mouse at California's Great America. A strong airtime moment at the end of this one is the main reason I put it above the best mock wild mouse coasters besides one. And it's pretty decent overall, besides the operations. Number 75 is Mad Mouse at Valleyfair. A slight step up, I found the airtime was a bit stronger, so it gets a bit of a higher spot. Number 74 is Excalibur. Excalibur at Valleyfair is a very overrated coaster. Many call it underrated. I found it was quite rough, and one very good moment of Flowjector airtime, so you're getting both thrown out of your seat quickly and staying out of the seat for a while. Outside of that, I thought this ride was pretty bad. Maybe I should put this below Mad Mouse, honestly. I did not enjoy it that much. Number 73 is Grizzly at California's Great America. A bit overhated, but ultimately lackluster. It has one or two moments where you might get some airtime, and the roughness is not bad. It is just kind of an average wooden coaster, but definitely not one of the worst out there like some have said. Number 72 is Sierra Sidewinder at Knott's Berry Farm. I need to get back on this one. Some love it, and I think it's one of the stronger spinning coasters, but I don't really remember enough about it to truly say if it's better than some are saying or as good, but for now, it is a solid family spinning coaster. Number 71 is Blue Streak at Cedar Point. A nearly 60-year-old wooden coaster, it holds up pretty well. It can be rough, but the airtime is great, it is a short but sweet ride experience, and a strong family wooden coaster, even if not every ride is necessarily super enjoyable. Number 70 is The Fly at Canada's Wonderland. A great wild mouse coaster. The first drop is awesome, the turns are not janky but you still get good forces. I like this one quite a lot, and I think it's a bit underrated as weird as that might sound. Number 69 is Reptilian at King's Dominion. Reptilian is a very fun bobsled coaster. As usual on bobsleds, the transitions are a bit they can be a bit harsh, but the ride looks nice, it's fun, decently long, forceful, and bobsled coasters are rare and fun, so it gets a few points there. Number 68 is Zambezi Zinger at Worlds of Fun. One of the newest roller coasters on this list. I am not a huge fan of this one. It looks nice, the spiral lift is cool, unironically my favorite part of the ride. A lot of the ride is pretty painful, and there's only so much airtime throughout it, but at least the pacing is pretty good. But it is a surprisingly bumpy roller coaster, and one I'm not really hankering to ever go back on. Number 67 is Wolverine Wildcat at Michigan's Adventure. This wooden coaster starts out strong, a good first drop and turn. After that, it kind of turns into a bit of a nightmare. It's not awful, but it's not very good, which is unusual given that the layout is very similar to a much better wooden coaster, Phoenix at Knoebels. Number 66 is the Bat at Kings Island. This suspended coaster is unfortunately very short, but a great setting makes this one, not to mention a strong bit of intensity when the layout's in full force. I can understand why some really love it, but I think it gets a bit too much hype. Number 65 is Spinning Dragons at Worlds of Fun. A great Gerstlauer spinning coaster. I found that my unbalanced car was a great experience, and the terrible operations are not enough to keep me from loving the nice setting and great layout of these Gerstlauer spinning coasters. Number 64 is Mad Mouse at Michigan's Adventure. The airtime pop on this one is insane. It blows the other Mad Mouse and Psycho Mouse coasters out of the water, and it is a shockingly great one to have at Michigan's Adventure. Number 63 is Backlot Stunt Coaster at Canada's Wonderland. Unfortunately, I found that the helicopter and fire effects on this one did not work, but this family ride is super fun. It has some great launches and intensity, and maybe even an airtime moment in there. And the theming is very strong, some of the strongest, a remnant of the great Paramount days, when that was the main focus of the park, of course, being a studio kind of thing. But yeah, it works pretty well. Number 62 is Backlot Stunt Coaster at King's Dominion, more or less the same, but a bit more consistent with the main effects working. And number 61 is the last Backlot Stunt Coaster at Kings Island, the best one for always working every time I'm there. Awesome fire, helicopter, all that, love it. Number 60 is Rougarou at Cedar Point. A hard one to rank, honestly. The first half is great. First drop, loop, dive loop, intense, smooth, and fun. Love that. Second half is pretty bad. It's rough, still decently paced, but it feels like it drags a bit more, and I don't like it really at all. It's a good ride, but not a great one. Number 59 is Patriot at California's Great America. Honestly, underrated. It is definitely my favorite of the stand-up floorless conversions, and as far as floorless coasters go, it is still one of the worst. But it's better than those other ones. It beats Rougarou, it is not rough, and even though the layout is a bit smaller, it feels better paced, so I did have a much more enjoyable experience, at least enough that it gets a bit of a higher spot. Number 58 is Vortex at Carowinds. A very fun stand-up coaster. Some hate it, I had great rides on it, and while it is short, I think it's a very fun one, and I would take it over Georgia Scorcher and quite a few other stand-up coasters, making it one of my favorites of the model. Number 57 is Hurler at Carowinds. This wooden coaster, it does have some rough patches, it's a bit of a weird layout, but the speed is awesome. This thing flies through the layout. And while it's not quite up to snuff with a modern wooden coaster, and a few great classics of course, I do think it's a good ride. Number 56 is Thunderhawk at Dorney Park. Thunderhawk is smoother than Hurler at Carowinds, however, it does have worse restraints. The lap bars in this really come down to crush you, and that's the worst thing about the ride. That said, it's still fun, and worth getting on when you go to the park. Number 55 is Corkscrew at Valleyfair. Shockingly great ride. It is technically a little unspectacular, it's that same layout, pretty much, as you would get on pretty much any other average aero looper, but fortunately, this one is perfectly smooth, and has much better hang time on the corkscrews than pretty much all of the others. Therefore, it is a high-tier aero roller coaster, and a mid-tier Cedar Fair coaster. Number 54 is High Roller at Valleyfair. Very similar ride, except wooden. This wooden coaster is kind of average in a lot of ways, but it's not too rough, has moments of airtime, and is pretty fun overall. I definitely enjoy it. Number 53 is Gemini Cedar Point. This racing coaster has gained quite an audience of fans lately. People now love it, think it's underrated, top 5 in the park, all that. I would not go nearly that far, but it's still great. The racing is awesome. A massive plus of the whole thing. If the ride did not race, it would be much lower on the list. That said, there are still some decent moments of airtime, and the finale is strong. So I have to get some credit there, and it's a worthwhile ride. Number 52, the Bat at Canada's Wonderland. This Vekoma boomerang is one of the better ones. In general, Cedar Fair seems to have better boomerangs. I like this one a lot. Not too much to say about it though. It is very intense in versions, a bit of a gimmicky layout, but still fun. Number 51 is Boomerang at Worlds of Fun. Same ride, so pretty much the same thing. It's not significantly better or anything like that. Number 50 is the Flying Cobras at Carowinds. The final boomerang mainly gets an edge for the awesome name. That said, it holds up well, and I do think it's a great boomerang overall. Number 49 is Invertigo at Kings Island. While also a boomerang, this one is not an average sit-down one. It is an inverted one, where you sit with your feet dangling and get some crazy intensity. Underrated ride, some hate on it, I love it. There's really nothing I can fault about it besides the bulky restraints, but there was no headbanging for me, so why should I complain about that? Number 48 is Possessed at Dorney Park. This intimate impulse coaster is nice to have since Wicked Twister is now gone. Wicked Twister was much better, mind you, but I like this one quite a bit. Twisting up the front and then going straight up the back is an enjoyable experience, and I find that this model in general is a great one that I hope can be preserved for a very long time. Number 47 is Racer 75 at King's Dominion. While the second half can be a little janky, this racing coaster gets some great airtime moments, a nice classic feel, a strong cohesive layout, and of course that dueling aspect is always fun. So it is overall a very nice, awesome ride to have. Number 46 is Racer at Kings Island. Very similar ride, same model, so I think it's right around that same spot. Number 45 is Mighty Canadian Mindbuster at Canada's Wonderland. This one, people hate. It's been called Spinebuster for quite a while, but I did not have any bad rides. It has been a little while, I'll admit, but I liked it a lot. I do enjoy how it goes through the water park a little bit. It was a long, fun, grand experience, and until a new re-ride changes my mind, it's staying right here. Number 44 is Vortex at Canada's Wonderland. The best aero suspended coaster for sure. You go up to the top of a Wonder Mountain, drop off of it. It's awesome. I love that. Really excellent ride. It stays forceful, you go over a water setting. It has all the best parts of the other aero suspended coasters, and none of the flaws. so it's overall a pretty great ride. Number 43 is Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm. An overrated ride, sadly. I rode it when it was pretty new, and it's rough. It has only a few moments of airtime and hang time, so it's not great enough or a standout enough ride to counteract that bumpiness that holds it back. The first drop isn't really all that for me, so it is among the more average Gerstlauer coasters, and it's a little forgettable for me. That said, the bigger good elements are enough to push it above some of the more consistently decent rides, where this one has a few more standout great moments that hold it up a little bit. Number 42 is Demon at California's Great America. Unlike the very bad version at Six Flags Great America, this ride is awesome. Every inversion is great, has hang time, and is enjoyable, and the theming elements are just as good as the one at Six Flags. So I highly recommend this, and think it might be the best Aero Looper, besides one. Number 41 is Montezuma's Revenge at Knott's Berry Farm. Being revamped and getting some new theming and all, I have only been on the original version, and it's awesome. Of course, the novelty of this being a unique Schwarzkopf shuttle loop coaster helps a bit. The ride is short, but it has decent force, it's fun, and definitely a blast to be on, even if it is only two elements really. Number 40 is Anaconda at King's Dominion. Hear me out, this has been one of my more interesting opinions for quite a while. I got on Anaconda recently. I used to hate it, but now, on a re-ride, I think it's excellent. The first drop is fun. The water tunnel is cool. The meandering afterwards is a bit odd, but it's not painful, and you're over the water so you get nice views. It feels a little bit like Jaguar at Knott's Berry Farm. So yeah, I recognize that that part's not amazing, but it's not bad, so I can't hold it against the ride too much. And then you have the corkscrews. Excellent. You're over the water, awesome hang time. If your phone's in your pocket as going in the water, there's a peril that I feel in those inversions, and I would call them probably the best inversions on any Aero coaster besides X2 and Tennessee Tornado. Great ride, and even if some parts are a little bit the flaws are practically non-existent, and the best aspects are awesome. Number 39 is Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point. Overrated, yeah, let's get it over with. The ride has its great airtime, but there is a 1 in 50 chance you get a ride where you can walk after getting off of it. A little bit of an exaggeration in terms of not being able to walk maybe, but the 1 in 50 thing is not an exaggeration. The best rides on this might warrant a top 25 spot. The worst rides barely get top 50. So I thought this was a pretty fair spot overall. Number 38 is Steel Venom at Valleyfair. This is like Possess. It's an intimate impulse coaster. You go up a twisty one, go backward up a straight one, up twisty, back straight, and then you stop. The holding brake makes this ride. The car stops for a second. You fall forward into your restraints. And that is an unbeatable feeling pretty much. It is a standout moment for any roller coaster. And that is why, even if the rest of it is more of a top 50-ish one, this earned a top 40 spot. Number 37 is Steel Force at Dorney Park. This Morgan Hyper is a very nice setting, and a pretty fun large helix, and a few moments of airtime. That said, the finale is kind of I did not get a lot of airtime on it due to a trim brake that they activate, but the ride is fun, and a solid hypercoaster even if among the weaker of the hypercoasters out there. Number 36 is Flight of Fear at Kings Island. Flight of Fear clones are awesome. You launch into a deep, dark room. The launch is not powerful, but it's loud and surprising. And the inversions are great. The pacing is good. The second half can be quite rowdy. So I prefer this to the outdoor ones, honestly. Number 35 is Flight of Fear at King's Dominion. Pretty much the same, but I found I got one bad ride on the Kings Island one that gave King's Dominion the edge. The only flaw with this one really that I found was worse here than Kings Island is that the lights are a little bright, so you can see what's coming next very often, taking away a little bit from that darkness thrill. Number 34 is Flight Deck at California's Great America. The first B&M invert on the list. B&M inverts are awesome. Feet dangling, intense ride, tons of inversions, great pacing, all that. Flight Deck has a bit of a weaker layout and it's a little shorter than the others, but I do find that the intensity is very strong, especially in the back row. I recommend very back on this one. And that water setting at the end is nice for the second half. So while it's not the best of the inverts, it is still a great ride. Number 33 is Hydra the Revenge at Dorney Park. A very unique B&M floorless coaster. There is quite literally nothing like it. You start with a JoJo roll, meaning an inversion straight out of the station. Frankly, the highlight of the ride. Then you have a drop, but no pre-drop. Most of the others you go down a little bit, then straight forward, and then you fall. Here you just go down right away. The inversions and airtime in it are unusual. The ride's a little short, and it's not the fastest or most intense, but it's fun, and very hard to beat in that regard. Number 32 is Wild Thing at Valleyfair. An odd ride, sometimes very janky. Other times, amazing. The best rides on this, you'll find the first drop is decent. The airtime hill following gives you a good 5 seconds of sustained floater airtime. Then you have a massive turnaround that can be quite intense, and sometimes if you're lucky, the return trip will give you much more airtime than Steel Force. So at its worst, similar to Magnum in a certain way, this one would be right where Steel Force is. But at its best, this could be a good 10 spots higher. Awesome ride, and definitely a bit overhated, as many call it Mild Thing. Number 31 is Patriot at Worlds of Fun. This one gets an edge over Flight Deck, as I found it feels a little longer and is more consistently fast and intense, so once again, a great hit as far as B&M inverts go, and a bit better than the previous one mentioned. Number 30 is Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm. No one's been on this in 2 years, so I thought I wasn't going to include it, but it's worth noting because the launch is awesome. Right out of the station, one of the best launches on any Cedar Fair coaster, love that. The top hat is good, and the following turns hold your speed pretty well. I do think Storm Runner is better, but that launch does make a lot of this ride. And overall, very worthwhile top 30 coaster in the chain. Number 29 is Talon at Dorney Park. Underrated. I might take this over every Batman the Ride clone, as I found the low to the ground stuff and the intensity were much better than Patriot or Flight Deck. A great B&M invert, absolutely the best ride at Dorney Park for me. Number 28 is Nighthawk at Carowinds. What used to be in my bottom 10 for sure, has now become an awesome ride. All of the Vekoma Flying Dutchman coasters, rest in peace Firehawk by the way, are excellent. You have a odd first drop, a very intense loop, some low to the ground helix that kind of feels like one of the scariest elements ever. You do feel really close facing straight down, and while it's not for everyone, and there was a time where the corkscrews were bad, now they're great, and some people that I know consider this one of their favorite roller coasters ever, and I can understand that. It is an awesome ride, and is much better than I used to give it credit for. Number 27 is Mamba at Worlds of Fun. The best Morgan hyper, beating out Wild Thing for consistency. First drop is decent, airtime moments are great in that first half, the turnaround is the best one of the Morgans, especially since a sprinkler often runs and gives you a bit of a splash effect, and there's no trim brake, so the final airtime is insane. Great ride overall, definitely a stronger hyper than some have said. Number 26 is Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. What an unfortunate one. The first half is insane. JoJo Roll is awesome. The launch is way better than people say. It is not as weak as the POVs make it look. The hang time on the loop, excellent. The first half is great. The second half really starts to meander, and I cannot tell you a single thing that happens in it. That said, the first half is more than strong enough to be a near top 25 coaster in the chain. Number 25 is Afterburn at Carowinds. This invert is not as intense as some say. Still great. Excellent invert. Top tier, well high tier, it's not really top tier. it would have to be Montu, Alpengeist, not happening. But anyway, Afterburn is a great one. It is a longer experience than some of the others I mentioned. It feels like it has more going on. The elements are better. It is a great ride. Number 24 is Valraven at Cedar Point. I have not stopped defending this one yet. I think it's excellent. The first drop, awesome. All dive coaster drops are great. The inversions, fantastic. Especially the 270-degree roll, I love that. The airtime hill, that gets the job done. I get thrown out of my seat every time. Definitely an underrated roller coaster. Some say it's mid, boring, all that kind of stuff. I can't agree. And even though the line is often a bit too long for it, when it's not, I'm always there. Number 23 is Dominator at King's Dominion. This ride has become a bit of a staple of the channel. I have loved it for a long time, and I've never stopped talking about how awesome and underrated it is. In a certain way, it is my favorite roller coaster at King's Dominion. I do think there are better ones, I'll get to those soon, but there is nothing I dislike about this ride, and it's pure fun and thrill. The length is the best of the floorless coasters. It's the longest one. The most happens. The vertical loop after the first drop is one of the best vertical loops I've ever experienced. Every element is intense. The speed is held the whole way through. Not a single moment hurts. I think this might be, at the moment, my favorite floorless coaster, even above some of the great Six Flags ones, and it is definitely an underrated ride. Even those who call it underrated are underrating it for me because of how much I adore this one. Number 22 is Intimidator at Carowinds. This has been called Intimidator for the trims kind of hurting the airtime, and yeah, a little bit. I do think it is probably the weakest of the major B&M Hyper layouts, but still, you get that great floater airtime, the ride is fun, you feel the wind in your face, you're very high up. It has all the hallmarks of a great hypercoaster, and B&M makes some awesome ones, so even if it's not the best of the B&M Hypers, it still deserves a pretty high spot. Number 21 is Raptor at Cedar Point. A shocking B&M invert. A lot of it is pretty standard, but still a bit above average, because there are 6 inversions, all of which are great, but you end with a very intense helix. That's actually my favorite part of the ride. I come pretty close to graying out sometimes, honestly, never quite there, but sometimes close. And that elevates the ride quite a bit for me, and even without that, I probably would put it above Afterburn, and definitely recommend it as one of the strongest B&M inverts. Top 20 time. Number 20 is Gold Striker at California's Great America. This wooden coaster is focused on low-to-the-ground elements and not as much airtime. Let's discuss it. The first drop is awesome. It is enclosed in a bit of a tunnel. That's unique. I adore that. Awesome stuff. The intensity is not quite as great as some say for me. It's well paced the whole way through, but I was not like, whoa, this is crazy, going so fast, all that. It's intense, but it's not a standout over other GCI roller coasters. And the ride can be kind of rough sometimes. When the ride's more intense, it's more rough, so that is a bit of a sacrifice you have to make. And at its best, it earned top 20, but only by a little bit. Number 19 is Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. Yes, this is going to be the one that most people get upset about, I'm sure. Look, it's been years since I went on this. I went back to King's Dominion this year, but the park did not open the ride. And I do phrase it as that, yes, it could have been open, but the park did not open the ride. But unfortunately, I have to go off of my first experiences, and yes, it is intense. But I find that it lacks the fun that a lot of the other better ones have, and I don't think it's one I really have any interest in rewriting outside of giving it the Redemption 1. And if that Redemption ride is awesome, and I decide, wow, that was thrilling and fun, I love that, I'd go on it again, or wow, that was so good, I underrated it, then yeah, I'll want to go on again and again. But for now, it's one that really just exists as an obstacle for me to overcome. Like if Airtime Turtles hated Sky Rush and then went back for a Redemption and like that, it's kind of like that. So for now, it has to stay here. Still a great ride, and I can understand why some put it at number 1, but I cannot agree right now. Number 18 is Renegade at Valleyfair. This is also, like Gold Striker, a bit rough. But everything from the first drop to the unique turnaround of this GCI to the crazy finale is awesome. This ride is awesome airtime, awesome intensity, awesome. I don't think it is the best GCI, I'll get to some of the other ones soon, but I think it's excellent. It does sometimes have that jankiness, but besides that, definitely a worthwhile ride, and one of the best wooden coasters out there. Number 17 is the Beast at Kings Island, a very hard one to rank. For me, it is leaps and bounds above Intimidator 305. But how do you rank this? It's a very unconventional ride, designed by hand, full of meandering straight track, incredible terrain, and before the second half, not really an insane amount of thrill. Well, in the daytime, the ride is very good, but sometimes janky and unspectacular. At night, this thing shines. These night rides are not overrated in the slightest. And no matter what time of day, the second half is some of the best any roller coaster has to offer. You build up so much speed that even though it's not really the most intense thing out there, I get scared every time. I love that. The ride has charm, and the ride has a lot going for it. At its best, the best rides in this, in a certain way, might be number 1. But it's very hard to rank against other coasters, so I do need to kind of put it in a bit more of a conventional category, and that's why it can only be so high. Number 16 is Banshee at Kings Island, my favorite B&M invert. Everything about it. I love the inversions. The first drop is the best of any invert for sure. The 0G roll has phenomenal hang time. It is fantastic. I absolutely love the ride. Underrated, frankly. Never got a rough ride. Definitely one of the best B&Ms out there. Number 15 is Gatekeeper Cedar Point, an underrated wing coaster. Everything about it is awesome. The first drop is excellent. Every inversion does what it should. The near-miss elements are fun. The airtime hill is successful. The helix at the end is but not bad. It's really not the worst thing out there, so I don't mind it too much. Not to mention, the ride looks gorgeous, glass smooth, super enjoyable, definitely an underrated one, my favorite wing coaster, and a very re-rideable, fun, thrilling experience. Number 14 is Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland. This first drop is gut-wrenching. The airtime hills afterwards are great, and the helix is intense, but that first drop is shocking, even by B&M hyper standards. So overall, it's a blast just like Intimidator, but with much stronger elements. Number 13 is Prowler at Worlds of Fun. I'm very happy I got a night ride on this, especially front row. It is a very, very good roller coaster. Super complete. The airtime is awesome. The turns are intense. The roughness adds to the ride, and it's not so bad that it takes away sometimes like Gold Striker might. I love it. The only flaw is that a little bit at the end, you can feel it losing speed. But besides that, it's very hard to criticize and very hard to beat. Amazing roller coaster overall. I truly fell in love with this one when I went last summer. Number 12 is Twisted Timbers. Quite the alliteration there. A tongue twister with Twisted Timbers, but at Kings Dominion, this is the best roller coaster right now. The barrel roll drop is very fun. The airtime moments all do the things they should. That is, throw you out of your seat into oblivion pretty much. It is a very well thought out layout. It's well paced. It's a good RMC. It's not a standout RMC, and in a lot of ways it feels like it was made to be a weaker version of Steel Vengeance, which does hold it back a little bit, but I do still think it's excellent. Not the best RMC, but no RMC would be below top 20 on this list probably, so this one is definitely better than some, and an excellent ride. Number 11 is Orion at Kings Island. A great Giga Coaster. The first drop is among the strongest on any roller coaster, period. The speed hill, excellent. Wave turn, awesome. There are numerous top tier elements on this. And while the ride is not the longest Giga Coaster, that size and speed still helps a lot. And I can't hate a Giga Coaster, they're all so awesome. They're all overhated besides I-305 pretty much. So I like this one quite a bit. B&M hits a home run with this one. Number 10 is Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. I like this one for the same reasons as Orion. I do think it feels a bit longer, and the airtime feels more sustained, so it gets an edge for that. Besides that, not too much to say, but I'll just note, both are fun, fast, tall, intense, glass smooth, great airtime, all that. So they deserve a bit more credit. Number 9 is Diamondback at Kings Island. Diamondback is the best B&M hyper. Everything about it is a home run. I've had trimless rides on it before that add so much to the experience. It just feels like the grandest one. There are others that are more impressive in certain regards, but everything about it, super enjoyable. The airtime is the best of any of the B&M hypers. The water splash is fun. It is a thoroughly enjoyable experience, and the rattle is very rarely a factor for me. A top tier roller coaster and a blast to be on. Number 8 is Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure. The lone star of this park. This ride, I came off crying every time. It is relentless. The airtime is awesome, some of the best. The speed is held the whole way through. The helix at the end is mind-blowing. The ride is long, it's massive. I super enjoyed it. The only flaw is it does feel like there's one or two airtime hills that were genuinely poorly designed and could have been much more enjoyable and less painful if done with a steeper grade. But other than that, you're not thinking on this ride. You're just going with it, being thrown up and down, left and right, and that's not for everyone, but I do think it's for me. And it is an incredible wooden coaster. Number 7 is Railblazer at California's Great America. This single rail coaster is short, indeed. But unlike Tumbili and a few other short ones here, it feels complete. Right from cresting slowly over that first drop, then flying down. That's awesome. Every inversion airtime hill does what it should. The pacing beats out many of the hybrids, including Twisted Timbers. I love this one, and I think the single rails, those who love them, they know where it's at. This ride is just excellent. Number 6 is Maverick at Cedar Point. Maverick has so much going for it. Everything about it, in terms of the intensity, is done well. First drop is shocking. The Stengel dives, awesome. Inversions do what they should, airtime as well. It can be a bit much sometimes, it truly can. Sometimes the intensity does teeter on pain. But when it doesn't, it makes for one of the best launch coasters out there. And a huge plus is the theming. You have very nice architecture, rockwork, water, and the tunnel launch. The tunnel launch, especially at night, is an unbeatable experience, and definitely warrants, pretty much on its own, a top 10 spot for Maverick as a whole. Number 5 is Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. If you ask 100 people what the most overrated coaster is, I'm pretty sure 60 would say Mystic Timbers. And I would tell all 60 to go on again. I think this ride is one of the best rides, period. It feels like a top tier RMC, but wooden. You have a great first drop, unbeatable pacing as far as wooden coasters go, truly unbeatable. No wooden coaster I've ever been on compares. Every airtime moment, fantastic. An intense ride the whole way through, great setting like the Beast, you go over the river rapids. It is a near perfect ride. And the shed was improved this year. It's now more atmospheric, and I dare say the shed now enhances the experience a tiny bit. One of the best wooden coasters, one of the best coasters, best at Kings Island. Very, very overhated. Number 4 is Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. Currently, my favorite wooden coaster. This one is not as relentless in pacing as Mystic Timbers, but it makes up for that with even better airtime somehow. Better airtime and better intensity. And yes, the ride can be rough sometimes, like any wooden coaster, but this one enhances the experience. Roughness is not an issue here, it is a benefit. The ride is near flawless. It is a classic wooden coaster, unlike a lot of the others I mentioned. Mystic Timbers is much more modern, but this one even beats out Shivering Timbers. It's hard to describe why I love it so much, but I do. Number 3 is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. I have talked about this one to the moon and back. Underrated, one of my favorite roller coasters in the world, still a top 5 coaster for me, honestly. I don't know what else to say. Great first drop, perfect intensity, honestly one of the more intense roller coasters on the list. Honestly, underrated intensity. It is not forceless in the slightest. I've been on this thing dozens of times. I've never had a ride that would rank below top 3. That's all I gotta say. Number 2 is Fury 325 at Carowinds. Disregarding some recent issues with the ride that will not be a factor on this list, Fury is a perfect roller coaster. There is nothing about it I dislike, and nothing about it I would think needs improvements. It has a speed that nearly matches Millennium Force, and a layout that surpasses it. Unique elements, fantastic airtime, and it doesn't seem like it takes up as much space. It doesn't feel like it's an own area or anything like that, but I don't know what to say. It's even more fun than Millennium Force, even more powerful, and definitely a world-class ride. And while some are now saying, you know what, it's not that great, I think it is one of the most re-rideable and accessible roller coasters for new incoming thrill seekers, while still being one of the very best. But number 1, many of you saw it coming, Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. Of course, this remains my second favorite roller coaster in the world, so it had to be above all the others. I talked about it a lot before, so we don't really need to go into it. We all know everything about it. We'll just leave it at, I think the airtime is the best of any roller coaster, and airtime is my favorite part of any roller coaster in general. So yeah, awesome ride, worth getting to Cedar Point for, and definitely one of the best roller coasters in the world. And even though Cedar Fair has so many incredible rides, this just speaks to how awesome the chain is as a whole. Getting to every Cedar Fair park was great. Some duds in every park pretty much, for sure, yeah, but I love that pretty much every park has multiple truly great rides. I recommend a visit to all of these, at least if you're into Shivering Timbers, otherwise you can skip Michigan's Adventure, but this chain is excellent. The best for roller coasters, I would say. And definitely a fun one to rank. Ranking 104 of them was tough, so subscribe for more content like this. I'll be putting in a lot of effort to rank every Six Flags coaster next, and maybe do a joint ranking afterwards. Subscribe for more theme park content. I'll see you next time.